Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. Today we are going to make a delicious creamy cauliflower soup. So this head of cauliflower as well as this head of cauliflower have all come out of my garden. I've got about 6 or 7 of them. So it's cauliflower soup time. This one's going to be a really nice hearty one. I'm going to put, now all of the ingredients are optional except for the cauliflower. So I'm putting button mushrooms, a whole onion, and I'm using smoked speck. So this is a smoky bacon that you can buy in the chunk. You can use normal bacon if you want to, or any other streaky kind of bacon, but this has got a nice amount of fat in it, and it'll be just really nice and chunky. So it's a good hearty winter soup as well. So cauliflower, speck, some mushrooms, onion. I love garlic, so I'm going to put a couple of cloves of garlic in this as well. Then the only other thing we need is water, some pouring cream, and some stock. So I'll be using chicken stock. So stick around and I'll show you how I make this really nice, creamy, chunky, hearty cauliflower soup. Okay, the first thing we need to do is chop up all the cauliflower. I've chopped up all the cauliflower, and we're actually going to use the stalks as well. And really all I've done is broken off the florets. If you want to chop it up small, you can. That's up to you, doesn't really matter. Now, this water I'm going to be using as the base of my soup as well. So what I want to do is season it, and it's up to you what you want to season this with. But this time round I'm going to be using these Marcel chicken flavoured stock cubes. So I've got about 3 litres of water, and I'm using 2 of the stock cubes. Normally I'd use Vegeta stock seasoning, and I just put in however much I need of that. But this time around I'm going to use the stock cubes. I have no idea why. So plonk that in there. As I said, we're going to keep this water, and by cooking the cauliflower this way, we're infusing the flavours with the cauliflower into the cauliflower. Sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds like I know what I'm doing. So infusing some stock cubes into the water, cooking up the cauliflower until it's tender, and then we'll put it into a food processor. But we want to keep the liquid because that's going to be our stock for the soup. Make sure those go in as well. I'll chop those up a little bit smaller. I'll put this on the stove, bring it to the boil, and boil it until the cauliflower are soft enough for me to put through a blender or a masher. So hang around and I'll do that. Now, if you don't have chicken stock cubes, which I have to tell you are fantastic broth tablets. So every afternoon I have a cup of broth and I use these chicken stock tablets. I have done for years. The other thing you can use if you don't want to use stock cubes is a vegetable stock or a chicken stock. So either one of those is fine as well, or whatever else you might have at home. So while the cauliflower is cooking, we want to chop up our bacon. So whatever bacon you choose to use, chop it up. So the rind has been removed from my speck. It's just a really nice chunky slab of bacon. You can get this in your deli as well, by big smoky pieces of bacon. And we just want to chop that up into chunks about 20 mil thick, maybe 3/4 of an inch thick. It really doesn't matter. It's just so that there's something nice and chunky in your soup. And then we're going to cross cut this into cubes. So cut it down lengthwise and then just chop it up. So we've really just got some small cubes that are probably around about a centimetre and a half in size. Okay, so my speck's been chopped up into chunky pieces. I'm going to put this into a fry pan now and fry it off until it's nice and crispy. If you've gone for a low fat option on this and you don't want to use something that's got lots of fat in it, then put some olive oil into your fry pan and fry it off. This has got loads and loads of good fat in it, so I don't need to put any into my fry pan. I'm just going to fry all this off, leave it over there, and then I'll come back and cut some onion and mushroom. Okay, so we'll finally dice this onion into little tiny pieces. I've drizzled some olive oil into the base of this fry pan, and I'm just going to put the onion straight into that. And I'll fry these onions. I don't want to make them go brown, I just want to make them go translucent. So I'll just gently fry them until they're transparent. And then I'm going to add this to the cauliflower water mixture, because then we can blend the whole lot together later on. And in the meantime, I'm going to chop up the mushrooms. My speck is frying off quite nicely here. I'm going to add all the mushrooms to this mixture now and continue to fry that. And in the meantime, I'm going to cut a couple of cloves of garlic and add those to the onion mixture as well. We've got a few cloves of garlic. I'm just going to chop that roughly. Okay, so the garlic is going to go in with the onions. I'll finish sauteing that and then we'll put the onion mix in with the cauliflower. So the onions are nice and translucent now, or transparent, and that's got the garlic in with it as well. This can go straight into the pot of the boiling water and cauliflower, because I don't want to have chunky bits of onion floating around. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I just don't want to have them like that. So I'd like my cauliflower and onion mixture to be nice and smooth. I like the chunky bits to be the bacon and the mushrooms. So I'll go and add this to the cauliflower pot that's boiling over right now. Alright, the bacon or the speck and the mushrooms have all fried off nicely. I'm just going to leave that to sit for the time being. And what we're going to do now is process all the cauliflower and onion and garlic mix. Now I've drained the cauliflower here. The liquid has been set aside and it's going back into the pot that we used to boil the cauliflower with. So what we're going to do now is just put portions of cauliflower and onion mix into the food processor, and we'll blend this until it's nice and smooth. So once we've filled this up, it's still quite hot. I'm making a bit of a mess too. Now I've kept aside some of the liquid so that it makes it a little bit easier to puree this as well. So I've put the mushroom in here. It's not mushroom. I've put the cauliflower, onion and garlic in here, some of it. And I'll just add a little bit of liquid to this. And we'll blend that until it's smooth. Add a little bit more liquid if you need to. And you can actually start putting some more cauliflower in here as well. So it's nice and mushy. It's nice and mushy. It almost looks like mashed potato. That can go into the pot that we've just cooked it in. So to get rid of the rest of the mixture, I'm just going to put some more of that broth, the cauliflower broth in there. Swirl it around. And there we go. Now, I'm not going to put all of the liquid in there because otherwise it's going to end up being too runny a soup. So of the 3.5 litres of water liquid that I did have to begin with, I'm actually only going to put in about 2.5 litres. Now this you can just test yourself to see how runny you want to make this soup. Don't forget we're going to be adding cream to this later on as well. Now this is just a nice milky broth. I've actually decided I'm going to put some chunky pieces of cauliflower in here as well. So I wanted to get this all nice and smooth and then have the chunky bacon or the chunky speck and mushrooms, and we're going to add all of that into the pan. Now before, when I seasoned the water, I only used 2 stock cubes, so I've intentionally under-seasoned this because this speck is really salty. And depending on the bacon or the speck that you use, you're going to have different levels of saltiness to it. So this is going to add a fair bit of saltiness to the soup. So I'm going to let this cook through for about half an hour and let the flavours infuse into the broth properly so that I can get a fairer idea of how it's going to taste. If it needs any more seasoning, then I'll just put some more vegeta in there or some chicken seasoning or even some more chicken stock. But anyway, I've got my nice chunky mushrooms and chunky speck in here, and I'm going to take that back to the stove and let that cook for about half an hour just to get that saltiness of the bacon or the speck going through. So that's the plan. In the meantime, here's some more cauliflower, and I'm just going to break that up into florets or smaller pieces, and we'll have that in the soup just as a little bit more chunkiness to it as well. So that's all I'm going to put in, just a few extra florets. I'll chop those up roughly, and then we'll have something nice and chunky in with the soup along with the bacon and mushroom. And it doesn't matter if this gets too soft in here. If you don't want it to, you can that was the dog. She wants to come in. If you don't want to have this too soft, you can add this in probably about 10 minutes before you dish it up. Remember I said earlier that I've under-seasoned the broth when I was cooking the liquid and the cauliflower together, and that was because I knew the saltiness from the bacon would come through and make it more salty. So this has got a lot more saltiness to it. Just taste it. And if you feel it needs any more seasoning, put whatever seasoning or salt and pepper that you like in there. This only needs a tiny little bit because that saltiness from the speck that I put in there has actually come through. So I'm going to add this chopped cauliflower now. Did I call this broccoli before? I may have. That's in another video. Anyway, this cauliflower, I've added the rest of that to it. I'll simmer that for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'm going to add some cream to that as well. About 10 minutes before serving. So this is nearly ready to go. Time to thicken up the sauce before serving it up. So I'm going to pour in a fair bit. So I've probably poured in about 400 or 500 ml of cream, and I'll just let that simmer through for the next 10 minutes or so, and I'll add some parsley and maybe some chives in there as well. So I've just got to go out to the garden, chop some up, and I'll sprinkle some parsley and chives over the top of this. So I'll simmer this for about 10 minutes. So just to add a little bit of colour to the plate, I'm going to chop some chives, add that to the pot, and I'll add some parsley as well. So I'll just go and add this to the pot, and then we'll have it nice and pretty and ready to serve up in about 10 minutes. Alright, the soup's ready to go. It's really nice and chunky, nice and thick. So there we go. We've got a couple of bowls of delicious creamy cauliflower soup with chunky pieces of speck. I'm just sprinkling some chives over the top, purely decorative only. So we've got mushrooms, speck and creamy cauliflower. And there's heaps left over for a rainy day, which is probably tomorrow, and we can freeze this as well. So this will probably go in the freezer, we'll eat it another day. See you next time.